And so I don't say the heel word. We just go out. She gets to, sniff around, do her business. Once I feel like she's done, but that could be, 3-4 minutes, then we'll stop, we'll make her sit, use the word, and then she, understand, and then I'm working, pretty hard with her to make sure she's sticking to me. So I hope that like even just having her out the first 3 or 4 minutes doesn't send some sort of conflicting message. Okay? Because I don't think she knows what, I'm trying to use the other word break.
Okay.
So when I get to like parts in our normal walks where I know she wants to sniff, I'll make sure she's sort of behaving, and then I'll sit her down, stop, we'll use the word break, and then I'll walk her over to the grass so that way she gets to do whatever. Then when she's done, walk her back, sit down, use the word heel. Hey, sit. And then, then we're back to working again. So she's definitely aware that she's got like a job to do.
Okay.
She'll still get distracted. She'll sometimes be walking ahead of me and like checking back the whole time instead of walking next to me as much.
Okay.
We practice our turns.
Now, is that in the heel?
Yeah.
When you said she's checking in?
Yeah. Even when, she's like, this is new behavior for her. Like, so she knows that like there's just more expected of her now.
Okay.
So she'll just kind of, when we're doing the heel, she'll just kind of inch forward a little bit and then be looking, inch forward.
Yep.
A lot of that. Sometimes we'll get a good groove and she'll be right here, but it's inconsistent.
Okay. So number is probably the problem.
Okay.
So when the dog is playing that game, she is aware. Dogs are really good with depth perception, so she's aware if she's just pushing it an inch. That's why you get this kind of like, can I get away with this? Can I get away with this? Right?
Yeah.
Is if she's willing to gamble that inch, it's because we're too low.
Okay.
Okay. What's the highest you've gone on your collar for like obedience stuff?
Probably in the 50s.
Okay. So let's say 55, for example. When you start your walk, are you starting at 55 or are you starting lower?
I guess now I'm starting at 50.
Okay, cool. So we're starting higher.
Yeah.
So at 50, like let's say it's like, Jesse, my turnarounds are like maybe 5 on a walk. It's still 5 on a walk, even though it's better than when it was.
Yeah.
So then I go to 55, then I go to 60, until I hit 0 turns on a walk. And then maybe it's like, last time I turned was like 2 weeks ago, because that tap at 60 was so impressionable. She's like, well, I don't want to gamble that again. Okay. So all these things that she's doing are normal. She's just pressing boundaries. So then it just comes back, because she's going to go by you. She's not going to one day just decide like, you know what, like you're putting a lot of work into my training. Like I'm going to be a good girl, right? She's going to just think to herself, like, is 50 like worth kind of pressing that inch? Is 60 worth pressing the inch? Is 80 worth pressing the inch? And at some point the answer is going to be no, right? And she's going to think to herself, nah, last time I tried to do that little game with dad, he hit me at 80 and I don't want that again, right? She's going to want to avoid that. Now she's all of a sudden walking at your side. So I can tell you right now, for sure, she already knows the concept. It's just a matter of, is it important enough for her to do it?
Should I have her sit?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it important enough to do it? Okay. I mean, it's the same thing for people, right? Like there's certain things that we press because, like on the expressway is always just the easiest example. Most people speed, but then they see a cop car and all of a sudden everybody slows down. But as soon as they're gone, they speed up again, right? Now, if there was cameras tracking everybody's speed, like some kind of minority report thing or whatever, then it'd be different, because now there's a constant tracker of like what you're doing, right? So at any point you can get a ticket for speeding. Obviously that's not a thing, so we know we can be opportunistic. So same thing for her. It's just what consequence is going to be the deterrent. And this is the hardest thing that people struggle with. Logically, it makes sense. Emotionally, they have a hard time going up higher than the collar because they feel bad for the dog. They're like, well, I don't want to hurt my dog. I'm like, well, it's not about hurting her. Like I got spanked growing up, and I'm sure my mom didn't want to hurt me, but the act of spanking hurts. But that's the intention, right? Like you talk back, this is the consequence. Then I don't want to talk back again. But I can avoid the consequence if I'm just respectful, right? So like I can start altering my decisions accordingly. So same thing for her, except dogs are all physicality. You know, they nip and bite each other, and they don't feel bad about it. You know, because like, oh, dog look guilty. They're usually guilty because of the energy or because they're not built for that. So like, let's say I've had, like, for instance, an example would be a dog that bit someone, and the client was like, oh, like after the fact, the dog was so guilty, like they were shaking, they looked sad. I go, no. I was like, your dog is shaking because they went into conflict or consequence, or not conflict, conflict or confrontation. They bit the person, and they're not built for it. So it's kind of like people. If someone is not built for confrontation, and they find themselves in that moment afterwards, you're going to get all that kind of just shakiness and stuff. Whereas there's some people that just walk away from a confrontation, they're completely fine. Right? It's because we're built differently. So that's the same thing for dogs. The dog bit someone, but the reason why they're shaking, looking sad, is because they're not built for that. They don't want the confrontation. So
if we don't need to take
yeah. So and then for the next one, we should ideally be back at the park again.
Okay.
So then I can see what's going on. More often than not, it always comes down to the number. Okay. So if 50, you feel like you're making more progress, then my walks this week 55, 60, and you can keep increasing it. It literally should be. It's going to be night and day. Where all of a sudden you hit a number and you're like, man, like this is easy. It should be that obvious when you're at the correct number. Okay. In the beginning, it's more work obviously because we're shaping things, we're teaching things. But once you got the concept down, which takes dogs just a few minutes, it's just a matter of is it important enough to do it. Okay. Questions underneath that?
No.
So last time I made contact with her, right? And she didn't react. And if anything, she tried to avoid me. Whereas the first time I saw you, even now, like me just moving around, moving that chair and stuff, and she's just kind of like in a passive state. Her ears are back. Her eyes look a bit stressed, but for the most part, she's like in a passive, stressed energy is what I would call this right now. Okay? So last time I went to touch her, she wanted nothing to do with me. It was more so avoidance. So when I just got her to sit still, and you can just kind of see how she was cowering, right? That's where the reactivity comes from. Okay? That's actually why except she's being more proactive of putting out threat to keep others away, right? So once we get this pin in the brain and she's in a more passive state, when I come in to make contact, we shouldn't see anything. Okay, so that's what we saw last class. So if we want to socialize her, realistically speaking, I always tell clients just people that she would see regularly. Okay, so if it's family or friends that would come over on like a once a week or somewhat regular basis, that's realistic to expect her to open up to. She would keep seeing them. That's kind of what people like. You know, I've known guys for almost half my life since high school. You know, and I have friends that I've met 2 years ago, and I have friends that I've met recently. And my comfort level with each one is different depending on how long I've known them for and how frequently I see them. So the same thing for her. If she sees someone once a year, well, she might tolerate them, but then she's gonna be like, well, I don't really know you because I only see you once a year, as opposed to someone she sees regularly. Okay. So with this exercise, it's gonna be a very strict and structured approach of how to socialize her. Because in order for her to open up, we have to break the boundary or have crossed the boundary. Okay. If it's always like I'm gonna be over here with my dog and you be over there, and we never close that gap, she'll learn to coexist and behave herself kind of like this. Right. But then you have to constantly kind of be watching all the time.
It's not enough.
Correct. Questions on any of that? So what we're gonna do here is go ahead and bring her a little bit more forward, about 3 or 4 steps, and you're gonna come to a stop and you're gonna shorten your leash. Shorten a bit more. A bit more. Right there. So I'm gonna be coming into her personal space. So here, if I go to reach her, and you go up on your collar, at the end, just give a little bit. So you can see how she just gets a bit nervy. Okay. But again, not really giving us that big explosiveness that we saw before. And no growling, no tension. Hi. Oh my God, you're so cute. Hey. Right? Open up. So here, with that energy, did you see any change in her behavior?
You know, she certainly at first shrunk back, looked up at me for some sort of like check-in reassurance, and then just kind of settled back into, well, this doesn't seem to be, it's not gonna hurt me, so she's then sort of accepted it.
Correct, right? And then when I came in with the clapping and the bigger energy, she maintained, right? So that's the biggest, when she's in the state, like the biggest and easiest read, okay, is if that made her uncomfortable, like when I started baby talking to her, aside from like the obvious explosion, what do you think would be the next step that would signal to you?
Oh, I definitely know what it looks like. I mean, she'll be silent, and
Yes.
like she'll start to go rigid, ears will go forward, it won't be panting, she'll just be locked in, and that's definitely, you know, when she's thinking about stuff.
Yes. So here, I made contact. She tried to escape a little bit. Not as bad as the last time. It was easier. She finally kind of just sat there and then took it. Didn't really low tension. She did quiet down, but it was because she was sniffing, and then her mouth went wide open again. So then I back away. I do big movements like this, and she's right. So here, because she's in a passive, relaxed state, I'm not seeing her go into tension. So if that did bother her, as you noted, quiet, okay? And that quiet is just letting you know that what's happening at the moment makes her uncomfortable, okay? It's nothing good or bad, it's just she's communicating, and it's okay that something makes her uncomfortable. It's what does she do with the discomfort, right? Does she become reactive? Does she get agitated? Obviously that's not what we want. But so she can communicate like, hey Dad, like Jesse talking and clapping at me makes me uncomfortable, and I'm gonna let it go, okay? But she kept it the entire time. So since she's in a more passive state, she's able to take more energy and more pressure, and we're gonna use that to kind of push her forward with like opening up, okay? So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and have you muzzle her up here. And I'm going to show you an exercise on how we can safely like introduce her to people, but still put you in the most control.
Okay. She hates this thing. She actually hates this now more than the leash. For a while she was getting really scared of the leash, and she's less scared, but this one, she hates it. Okay. All right. Fine. All right. So, sorry. I know. Come here. It's okay. It's all right. I know. It seems so terrible. It seems just so awful. I know. You're okay. You're such a threatening dog. Sometimes she can be such a lowless. Right? You're right.
Now, with that muzzle, on the bottom of it, there is a loop here. Can you see that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. What you're going to do is you're going to remove your e-collar, and you actually feed it through that loop there. So it's gonna swap places with your prong. But what it does is it secures the muzzle to her head. So should she try to remove it, she's not going to be able to, because if it's fitted correctly here, and then the collar's looped through that, it keeps everything secure.
So the e-collar will actually go through that?
Correct. It should. If it's wide enough. I know if it's too small, it might be too wide.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure that looks like a 3 or a 4, so it should just fit through.
Should I just take the prong off completely?
You can leave the prong on. You'll just bring the e-collar up above it.
Above it, okay. Hold still. Wait.
Yeah, there you go. And you fit it normally, it just would be above the prong now.
That I did not know. Let's see.
good. So, if everything's fitted correctly, because you want to think there's going to be 3 stressors right now. Do you know what those 3 stressors may be?
The muzzle and this?
Yes, correct. Okay. So here, because we're putting her under more pressure, even if there's not been fighting on the muzzle prior, this is where we expect to see it. Because the dog's like, all right, I got this going off, I got this on my face, which just removes my primary form of self-defense, and I got you invading my personal space, right? Is all those things add up. You always want to make sure that everything is secure. So having that, so when she's going to wear the muzzle, just you would do your setup like this. With a muzzle, then the e-collar through, looped it, a loop through so that it helps secure. So then, and on the back of the neck here, it should also fit super snug. We will be fine because I don't think she's doing anything right now because I already touched it. But on the back of the head, typically people put it too loose, where a finger can get through, and really it's so snug that you can't even get a finger in. Okay? Because it can easily come off like this. So the e-collar secures it down here, but if this comes off, it'll slide down like that. Okay? So go ahead and bring her forward again. I'm going to bring it to your side. Very good. Very good. So, yep, and then up. Very good. So what we're going to do here is when someone approaches, we want to watch this step by step. And there's more to this exercise. So think of this as kind of like a separate piece. So let's say someone came over to your home. She was barking or being territorial. And then you kind of ignored that. And then you try to do this exercise. It probably wouldn't go well. Okay? Because she's loaded from the person entering. It was not resolved. And then we try to jump to this. I expect there's going to be a problem. Okay? So people coming in is a separate exercise. And that's the one I think I mentioned that has to be done in home. Where I show you how do you have people come over. So if she escalates, you've learned this exercise, we bring her down to here, and then we do this exercise, less likely to see something because we didn't leave her loaded with the previous stress. Does that make sense? So here, like let's say you're walking and someone goes, oh, you got a beautiful dog. I had rots. Can I pet her? And you'd be surprised. You're like, really? She got a muzzle on. But because the muzzle provides that person with the sense of like, oh, like there must be an issue. Otherwise, why would she be muzzled, right? But I'm safe, technically speaking, right? So when we do this exercise, again, I don't care about people outside. You can absolutely do it outside. But it's the people that will come in the home that matter the most because you see them regularly. And that's where it's more realistic that we can expect her to open up and start recognizing people. Okay? So here, when we do this exercise, what I like to do is I'll show you, and then I'll have you go into it, is I'll crouch down like this, right? So I'm next to the dog, always in a sitting position. I'll slide my hand up, so I'm right next to the collar by the clip here. I have my remote here as well. And my left arm goes around the dog's neck, so like her head would be here. Okay? So what happens is this secures her, and we're relaxed. We're not squeezing. Okay? So when the person approaches, they wouldn't approach like this. This is the hardest. Okay? What we would do is if I approached, can I pet your dog, right? You say sure. But let's say she started growling right here. I would not go up to the next step. I would correct her, resolve that tension. She goes to state, then you go down, you set up. This person comes around from the side. Okay, so now it's me, her, you. Okay? You're already, of course, holding her a certain way. So let's say I come here, she has a problem. Because you're set up like this, which direction do you think she's going to lunge?
Left.
Yes. Okay? So here, I can easily just close my arm, and the elbow blocks the head, but also because I have leash here, can't go that far because of this as well. So we limit her range of motion. If we leave the leash slack like this, she could still lunge forward and out to that degree. So we limit giving her only like an inch, and then this to help body block. So when the person comes around and positions here, how does she feel about it? Maybe she quiets up, maybe she starts to stare, like you said, ears, all those things. I don't move forward, I correct, get that out the brain. She goes into a passive state. Now the person crouches down. Okay. When we go to touch the dog, I don't just go straight for the face. I go for the rear. Okay. Because if I go close to the head, obviously I'm right near bite zone. But the way you have it set up, she technically couldn't get to me. But I want to see, how does she take to the touch?
Okay.
So I start at the rear, and you might see her kind of scoot in or shudder. And when I come in and make contact, again, how does she feel about it? She starts to growl or something. I would stop. I would keep touching, but I would not pet. Correct. It should resolve the tension. And then I start to pet again. Okay? Because if she growls and I pull back, what does that tell her?
Keep growling.
Correct, right? Because she growled, said, don't touch me. And I said, okay. Right? So ideally, the person would keep their hand there. Obviously, if it's someone who's not a trainer, they're going to be like this. It's fine. She still got corrected. We repeat. Okay? So I pet her. I work my way up. And we might find, as I'm petting her, maybe as I get closer to the neck or the shoulder, all of a sudden, she quiets up, right? Doesn't mean anything bad, but she's saying, hey, with him approaching my shoulders, I'm getting uncomfortable. And then she gets quiet. And then maybe she pants again, right? She lets it go. Then I continue with what I'm doing. What do I think?
Okay, I mean, door's right up front, on the street.
And then I just call the number on the door.
What is it, call when the door is open?
Yeah, it's stuck on there. There's a number. Starts with 661.
661 starts with?
Okay, all right. Yeah, so we're gonna bring her back to your left. Yeah, so we're just doing this step by step.
She's clearly already
And
scared.
this can also be paired with food. And I think you've used food before, correct?
Yeah, she's very food reactive.
Okay.
That's not the word I'm looking for. She's
Food driven.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So here, the reason why if we can incorporate food now is because we have a means of getting her into a passive state. Okay, if she's lunging and barking, going, hey, get out of my house, and I'm throwing her chicken, I'm technically rewarding that. Okay, because when you apply the reinforcer, it's telling the dog what's happening right now, and I want you to do again.
Yeah.
Okay, so here, she's in a passive state, and I'm petting her, and then we apply the food. Now she's thinking, maybe, was she already here?
Sounded like it, yeah.
Okay. Good. Come on.
How are you?
Good,
Thank
how are
you.
Yep.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Leanne. Hi, sweetie. It's me.
There we go.
It's me.
So we were just going over making contact with her to
Okay.
work on sociability.
Okay.
I can do this actually.
Oh, no, you're fine.
So I'm showing Carl a step-by-step approach
Okay.
so that I don't know if I told you like last class, I made contact with her. She didn't really do much other than try to avoid me.
Okay.
There was no tension in any kind of negative way.
Okay.
Right now, I just touched her without the muzzle with the sleeve again. And
Okay.
she just tried to scoot away, but then just kind of sat there.
Yeah.
No tension.
Okay.
So, main thing would be right now, well, now she's been excited, but this panting is a passive, relaxed state. So, when she's panting, if she goes under stress, you'd hear her most likely quiet and get quiet. And that tells you what's happening right now makes me uncomfortable.
Okay.
Okay, now that again, that's okay. But what matters is what does she do with that discomfort?
Okay.
Okay, so if she gets uncomfortable and then it's hurt. Obviously, that's not what we want. If she gets uncomfortable and says, like, you know what, I'm gonna like ignore this person, that's like fine, right? Like, sure, you can be uncomfortable and you can avoid them if you don't like them, but don't be aggressive or don't be defensive.
Okay.
Okay. So I was just showing them a very kind of structured way of how we approach, how we would approach this, like with people coming over and stuff.
Okay.
Because we have to push past those boundaries in order for her to be able to open up.
Okay.
Okay? So right now, if it's just she's standing around me and we never interact, we may never see her open up to me. right? By me coming into that personal space and like making contact with her.
Okay.
And like, let's say she becomes defensive and we correct that stuff. She's learning, okay, I don't like Jesse, he came to my personal space, he made contact with me, I was corrected, he continued to pet me, there was no bodily harm or no harm or threat from him. If I got the e-collar, it's in response to what I was doing, which tells her don't become defensive, right? So she's starting to kind of process this stuff and like, okay, like, well, he's not gonna hurt me anyways, because he just pet me 100 times and nothing bad has happened. The only thing that happens to the e-collar if I lunge and bark.
Okay.
Okay, so then she starts to think, oh, so it's not Jesse that's causing the e-collar,
Okay.
right? And he's not hurting me. He's an okay guy.
Okay.
And then we might see her open up to, whomever, like if it's a guest or a friend or a family member.
Okay.
Outside people I really don't care about so much because what are the chances of you seeing them again unless it's a neighbor,
Right.
right? But technically you can use every opportunity to socialize her, okay?
Cool.
Having the muzzle on helps remove, for the person who's gonna help you, just the threat of any kind of contact, okay? So it's funny with people, I learned this early on, is people will pet your dog with no permission, randomly, but the moment you ask them to pet your dog, they question it,
True.
okay? So having the muzzle on, they see it, they go, okay, sure, like obviously you're working on something, and she's muzzled, so I'm safe. Okay, if she's not muzzled and you try to do this, people will most likely tell you no.
Okay.
So,
And actually, South Beach is such a dog-friendly environment with so many aggressive breed dogs that I feel like that would be a more conducive space than like walking through Lincoln Park and be like, do you want to pet my Rottweiler?
yeah. And this would be something, and you can, like the more you press her that way, the faster she would kind of overcome it.
Okay.
But realistically speaking, I just care about people that would come into the home.
Okay.
Okay, if it's some like Joe Schmo on the street that wants to pet your dog, I'm like, well, who cares, right? And I also always tell people, just put yourself in that same position, right? Imagine having to say hi to every single person you saw.
Yeah.
It gets annoying at some point, right? So same thing for her, so it's a balance of sometimes you would press her boundary, and other times we would just coexist. So that this way, she's not sitting there going like, oh, Jesse's back again, he's just gonna pet me like he always does. Like that can get frustrating as well for the dog.
Okay.
So it's a nice balance.
Okay.
And then what we hope to achieve here is that, and the way this typically works is the people she's seen several times, who maybe she's not gotten over. Okay, like every time they come over, she's still suspicious of them, but she's seen them several times. Yeah.
She's real hot cold about Sean.
Yeah. You most likely see her turn around faster with that person because she's already seen them several times. She just never got to a point where she could make a consistent decision of like, okay, you're cool. Okay. Newer people, of course, will take longer. That's generally how that works. And then you'll just, as you work with her, and again, we can push the stuff, and then she can still not like certain energies. Nervous dogs tend to not like big, boisterous, loud energy. So if you have anybody who talks really loud or just has really big movement, probably not going to like that kind of person.
She puts up with me, so that's a good.
Yes, but you're her person, right? As opposed to
But we're
like
not meek people, so that's good.
me, right? So if I came over with this big energy,
Yeah.
she probably wouldn't like me.
Yeah.
Okay? Questions on any of that stuff? All right. So I'm going to have you go to step next to her.
Sit. Sit.
There you go.
Left hand.
Right hand on the leash close to the clip. So you're going to be all the way up.
This goes in that hand?
No, remote right hand. And then the right hand goes to grab the leash right next to the her leash.
leash?
Right there.
Okay.
Perfect. Right there. Okay. And then you lock the leash around your finger.
Lock my leash around my finger. How do I do that?
It's going to be, so if you grab on your clip, right here, like this, you can just do this.
Okay, wait. Yeah, I know. You're gonna set the button off for the hand.
Exactly.
Okay. You're not getting it off. Hey, stop.
Okay. And there you go. And if remote's better, your left hand, you can do that as well.
Okay.
And then your left arm goes around her up and down, just like that. Okay. So if I come to approach, we do this step by step. So if I come here and there's already a problem, we would correct her here. Nothing's going on. I step over here, still open mouth, still panting, right? I come down to here. Now I'm on her level. So the reason we do this is the way he's positioned is if she's gonna lunge and bark, which way is she gonna go?
Well, she really can only go into his body because he's got his arm around her.
Correct.
Right?
But if
So
she's gonna target me, which direction would she
she's
go?
gonna go towards you.
Right. And
Yeah.
then what's blocking her?
The arm.
The arm.
Yeah.
Right. So when I go to make contact, if she were to go, because you want to be relaxed. If you're holding your dog like this, you're already putting in tension. You're already telling her, I don't trust the situation. So we're nice and relaxed. The fact of him holding the leash up here limits how far she can go left. Plus, I got the arm to block.
Okay.
Okay. When we go to pet, I don't go for the head.
Got it.
Okay. I would come for the back here.
Okay.
Okay. So right there, see when I made the touch? There was a quick close of the mouth and the lick of the lips. That was a very brief moment saying, what was that?
Stressed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm slowly just making contact here. Keeping it at the back. And then I slowly kind of work my way up right there. Okay.
Yeah.
And now
Okay.
wait a second. And then now open mouth.
Okay.
Okay. How are your knees?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
If your knees are like mine, I understand. So if you need a break, just let me know. Okay. Right there. You see that? That was questionable. Right there. Good. So I'm gonna back away. And if you need a standing break, feel free. So in that moment, initial contact, really quick, right? That was a very quick second of like, okay, it happened, right? And then little by little, I started to kind of pet around. I kind of went up, I think, around the shoulders area, and then there was a little bit more lip licking real quick, and then let it go again, right? So she went, okay, you're going to the shoulder, fine. And then I went back to the rear hind left leg, and then that was the longest moment of quiet, right? But it was not a tense like quiet. It was like I could see where she's like, okay, you're going near my hind leg, but again within a second, and then back to open mouth. Okay, so this state here, it's nice because it gives you a very obvious change from back to the open mouth, closed mouth, open mouth. Okay, so relaxation, tension, relaxation. Okay. So when I'm making contact with her, I'm going slowly because I'm trying to see where is she going to have issues. So everything could be fine, but then like the moment I go by her hind leg, issue, right? So like I had a client whose dog had like some kind of like hip issue. So when we went around the hip, or if I went around the hip, it was the dog didn't like it. And then if the owner did it, the dog was fine, right? But because the dog had a hip issue and it was an unknown person or an unfamiliar person, he had an issue with the owner because she was trusted, it was perfectly fine, right? So I know those things. So we start to work our way up, and then we go by the head and stuff. Okay, but I start back because you can see where she was being uncomfortable, like she tucked into Carl a little bit, and then if she tries to lunge at me, she's gonna go left, which I'm protected with the way he's holding her. Okay, the whole time being nice and relaxed, because if you're saying like, oh my God, please don't lunge, don't lunge, don't lunge, don't lunge, you're gonna create
That
something.
energy.
Yes, because I understand that you're prepping for your dog, right? Like let's say even on the street, release, you see someone coming and you do this, right? I would understand you're prepping for your dog, but she thinks you're prepping for the whatever that
Person.
threat, exactly, whatever that thing is, she thinks you're prepping for that, okay? So here, being as relaxed as possible, and that's why all the number stuff is important, because here she did have a moment. I want to be able to kick in with that tap and just shut it down immediately. I don't want to be sitting there resting the dog while this is happening. I'm trying to correct her, so if we're too low on the collar, it's just going to be an unpleasant experience. Okay. Questions on any of this so far?
Nope.
So I was mentioning earlier that you could pair food here. Okay. You can release her, and if she wants to lay down, she can lay down.
Yeah, break.
Lay down. Down. There we go. So the difference is, if a dog is being defensive with me, and I'm throwing chicken or turkey, whatever it is at them, to try to gain their trust, well, they're in a suspicious mode. And remember, whenever you add a reinforcer, you're reinforcing what's happening at the moment, okay? So whether it's coming from you or from me, if she's in a tense or defensive, aggressive state, we're telling her, yes, you should do that, okay? So like very common, dog becomes reactive, owner holds the dog back, hey, it's okay, there's something to be scared of, it's okay, right?
Yeah.
And I get it, I understand completely what the human is doing, but the dog just thinks, keep doing it. Okay, keep doing it, right? Because I'm
You're giving me
petting them.
pets.
Yes,
Yeah.
because that's what we do in
Yeah.
protection training.
Yeah.
So here, you just want to think when we add the reinforcer, whether it be praise, touch, or food, I'm reinforcing what's happening at the moment, right? So if I'm making contact with her, she's in a nice passive state, and you give her the food, she's learning good things happen when Jessie makes contact with me, and we're also reinforcing the calm and passive state.
Okay.
Okay, so now we can start earning trust. So I mentioned the call earlier, let's say you had someone come over, they knocked, she was barking and stuff, and you didn't do anything about it, and you went straight to this, or this later on, it would probably not go well, because the whole tension around the door was not resolved.
Got it.
Okay, so they're two separate exercises.
Understand.
So you have to do one before you can do the other.
Okay.
Okay, here, because you came into my space, right, it's not me entering into your space, we're able to just kind of jump to this.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's the boundary of the door makes a really big difference to dogs.
Okay.
So like, I don't know if I've talked about this or if you've seen a viral video of two dogs on either side of a fence fighting.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? Where
Yeah.
when it was closed, they were fighting. When it opened, they stopped fighting.
Yeah.
Yes, because dogs are on or off.
Yeah.
They're either aggressive or they're not aggressive. They're either anxious or not anxious. There's no real in between. Okay, so that door creates a context that when someone knocks, rings the doorbell, or enters, she just goes into territorial. Okay, and until something's done about that, she'll either stay stuck or there'll be some kind of residual tension because it was not addressed.
What kind of things should we be telling her when she's reacting to sound outside of a door knock? We live in a very residential area where there's kids who come and play in our front yard, and the dogs fly off the handle because there's windows and doors between them and the stimulus outside. So what we classically will say is their name and then no bark, or we'll redirect them. But based on what you're saying, that's kind of an empty statement, right? Because
Correct.
they really are primed to do that. So if we're going to be living in a condo in South Beach and we're supposed to keep our dogs from barking, what is the best technique that we should, so that we don't confuse them and we don't give them mixed messages? What should we? I know. What should we do? Should we keep them away from the doors?
No, I mean, so there's a few ways this can work. Is if she was barking out the window,
Yeah.
right, and another dog did not like it, what would this dog do to stop her?
What do you mean? What would the dog do to stop her?
Yeah, how would that dog correct her to tell her not to bark out the window?
The dog on the exterior?
No, so like let's say, you have your
Yeah.
window.
Yeah.
Leon's barking, and let's say there's another dog in the home.
Yeah, we have one of those. Okay.
And let's say they don't like her barking.
Okay.
How would they stop her?
Well, we don't have that issue. We have a tag team effect. We have two dogs that go apeshit together.
Correct, but it's just that for an example.
Okay. I assume she would like nip her.
Correct. She would
Okay.
never bite her, right?
Okay.
So as a consequence.
Okay.
That's like the dog form of spanking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So technically, you could use your e-collar,
Okay.
right? But that only addresses one dog. But
Uh-huh.
then also, what's the drawback to the e-collar?
Well, you constantly have to be on it, right? I mean,
Or you're really close.
She's got to wear it all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, you become dependent on the collar.
yeah.
Outside is one thing, because you can attribute for random run-ins with people,
Right.
stuff
Right.
like that. You want to have
Right.
the collar on most control. Inside the home, you could correct her for 2 months, consistently every single time, and the moment you take it off,
She's gonna go.
she's gonna go.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's where we use what's called bunker.
Okay.
Okay, it's just a roll of towel. I don't have it here. It's just a roll of towel.
Okay.
It would let's say you roll it up and use hair bands or rims or
Okay.
zip ties
Okay.
to keep it shaped so it would look like this, and you literally bonk the dog with it, either by throwing it or by bonking them yourself. I have videos that I can send you. There's 3 that I send to my clients.
Okay.
How to make one, how to use one, and one of a trainer actively using one.
Okay.
Because you got to remember, dogs are physical animals.
Yeah.
Right? The issue with this is people have problems with the physicality part of it.
Yeah.
Because it's them hitting their dog,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's all about the intention. Because
Yeah.
everybody goes, Jesse, what's the difference between that and abuse?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, abuse is there's no reason. It's over the top, overly forceful, overly aggressive, a lot of shouting, anger, frustration, negative energy involved.
Yeah.
Whereas here, if the dog barks at the window and I just bonk him with the towel and she goes, oh.
It kind of makes sense because Leon will stop. She listens, and we talked about this morning or last night. If you redirect her even with your voice, she'll quiet down. It's our other dog that becomes just like obsessed.
Oh,
And
she's quieting down, but I can't tell if that means she thinks she did her job.
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Oh, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I yell at her, she quiets down, but she
She's
feels
like,
like,
oh, mission
got it.
accomplished.
I did what I was supposed
Yeah.
to. Still, next time I'll do the same thing. Like,
It's still a recurring process.
Right.
And what you're wanting is whenever the kids are playing outside, just don't bark at them.
So the other dog, you've seen me sometimes when she's tugging on the window treatments, I will grab her by the scruff and I'll say, Ivy, no, and she cowers. You know, we don't aggressively touch our dogs, so I can see how something like that would be really effective because we just don't
The
get
main
that
thing
aggressive with
you
them.
always want to think about is them not doing it again.
Yeah.
That's
they
the
probably
biggest
won't.
difference, okay?
Okay,
Is I don't want the dog to repeat the behavior.
okay,
You know, so growing up, like, you know, spanked, grounded, all the, you know,
Yeah.
traditional punishers for kids, whatever.
yeah,
And a balance of all those things, like, deterred me from making certain decisions.
right,
Right? It's the same thing for the dog.
Okay.
So in the beginning, you might, and if you're doing a good, firm, appropriate correction, it's literally night and day with stuff. What holds people back is just the comfort of using the e-collar and or physically correcting their dog. That's the biggest thing that people struggle with. Because logically, like, oh, it makes sense. Mostly, like, I feel bad. And everybody has a natural hump regarding physicality with their dog. Because
Yeah.
we're taught it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong,
Yeah.
it's wrong, right? But dogs bite each other.
yeah,
So like with puppies, you know, the mom or an adult dog will correct the puppies in 3 to 4 weeks,
yeah,
right? Whereas we don't really correct dogs ever.
yeah.
Now, and dogs bite their puppies, right?
Mhm.
So I was talking to a client because they had their dog since she was a little puppy and they had all these issues, and I was telling them, and I told them, well, if the mom can bite your puppy at 3 to 4 weeks, I'm like, is that abuse? And they go, no, that's her disciplining them. So I go, so if you discipline your puppy in a physical manner, though, that's abuse. And they're like, well, that's the way the world sees it. I go, right, but that's incorrect. Is the mom dog abusing her puppy, or is it discipline? Does that make sense?
So can you just do me a favor and just like on my arm show me how hard you would bonk her? How would you bonk
I mean,
her? Like just
depends.
bonk her.
Just
Like
bonk her?
show us an example.
What's the intensity of the
Just-
behavior?
So she's going at the window treatments
Okay.
because they come down easily. She's gonna pull window treatment down because she's barking out the window. It's
Okay,
aggressive. So
okay,
go
so
ahead.
what's the
like-
worst of the worst?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So you're bonking her pretty hard.
Yes.
Okay.
You also want to think this is a towel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's the act or thought
Yeah.
of
Oh,
the
it's
physicality.
totally. She would just like panic. You know
Yes.
what I mean? Okay.
And then we just let it ride out.
Okay.
Okay, we don't try to console her. We don't try to, you know.
You say no bark. You know, right?
and then
You give
just
the
correct.
verbal no
So I
bark.
actually don't say no bark
You don't. Okay.
No.
What do you say? Do.
because now you create cute behavior.
Okay.
So the way a dog brain works, they're barking out the window.
Okay.
It's the kids. Do you want her to bark out the window when it's the kids?
No.
Right. It's just no. Just don't do that. Right. If you say no bark, in her mind, she thinks I can bark until you say no bark, and then there's a consequence. But if I know I don't want that behavior, period, it's simply correction, no warning.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So let's say you don't want her to bark at kids. You always correct for that, no warning. But then, like when it's like adults, you want her to bark because it's adults.
That's
Maybe it's a
true.
suspicious character, right? And then you don't just correct. You would say no bark, and then correct if needed.
Okay.
So now she's thinking, okay, I never bark at kids when they're playing, but when I see like the UPS guy or the mailman, whatever, coming into our yard, I bark. But then when I hear no bark, my job is done.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's, the way you think of it is, when you want to eliminate behavior, you simply correct it, no warning. When you want to control behavior, it's cue something first, then correction.
Okay.
So the dog thinks, so like let's say she's barking, I'm downstairs or something, I don't know what she's barking at. And then 10 seconds later I go up and I look outside and like, oh, it's just a neighbor, no bark. now she stops. But in that time frame, she can continue to bark. If I'm not home, she can bark, right? Because nothing's telling her to stop. That's the difference.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So when you correct, we go by intensity, and maybe like it's a low-level behavior. You're like, oh, that's like a 3. I'm gonna just give her a little, bob, and she still keeps doing it. Some dogs need really
A
harsh
lot,
corrections,
yeah.
even for the little things.
Yeah.
It depends on the dog. And
Okay.
yes, there are dogs where this won't be effective because, again, dogs bite each other.
Yeah.
It's a roll of towel,
I
right?
think it'll work. Don't
But-
you? Yeah.
So I have 3 videos I can send you. If you don't
Okay.
get them, just let me know.
Okay.
And you'll see the trainer act, but we make contact with the dog, on the dog, okay? A lot of people will throw it next to the dog because, again, they feel bad, but now they're threatening the dog. Threatening versus following through are 2 different things.
Okay.
Okay, so when my mom said, wait till we get home, I knew I need to worry about that whooping that was gonna come as soon as we got home, okay, because she followed through.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Otherwise, wait till we get home has no meaning. Okay, so questions on any of this stuff so far? Is this making sense?
Yes.
Okay, so how we've progressed this is week 1, introducing her to pressure to help her be in more passive states, like stuff like this can happen without her blowing up. Okay, because if I would have tried to do this on the consultation, right, probably wouldn't have gone well. So we had that class, the second class made some adjustments. I know we're still working on stuff. I was telling Carl most likely just too low in the collar. Okay, so we want to raise that number. It's currently operating at about a 50.
Okay.
Okay, so her number could be 85, and then on 85, you're like, man, all the lunging, all the barking, dogs, humans, skateboarders, rollerbladers, none of that stuff matters anymore. But she just needed 85 in order to keep all that in check. Okay, when we do things like this, I typically go by whatever the working number is. If it is that high, but we feel like she's being very responsive, I might come down a little bit to like 50 or 60, because since I want her to like me. So if I come in to touch her and I slam her at 100, now she's gonna be very paranoid about me coming in to pet her. So when we do this, it gets a bit more nuanced,
Okay.
right? So I may not be at the 85 because there's more to it.
Okay.
Outside, if I'm just walking past someone, I don't care if she likes me or not, but don't lunge, right? So it doesn't matter if I'm 85 or 127 or 20. But when it's like, okay, this is our friend, this is our family, they're gonna pet you, we would like you to like them over time. If you're constantly correcting her at 100 and making her paranoid around them, like she's not gonna want anything to do with them. She's gonna be completely avoided. She's like, when I see you, I get 100. Does that make sense? So that's where it's like a little bit of math.
Okay.
Because we do want her to open up, I go down lower,
Okay.
okay, and then go up higher if needed. So this way she's not just caught off guard, like right
Okay.
away, thinking like, well, I don't want you to even get near me because I don't want to hit 100 again. Okay. Now, repetition is key. So if I come in to pet her, she's reactive, you correct her. She doesn't know that the correction is because she was reactive. She might relate it to me, right? Because there was me moving in, then she triggered, then the collar happened. So then she has to determine, was it me or was it Jesse, right? And that's why we keep pushing, and then I step away and I come back and I do it again. So then she's like, okay, well, first time I lunged at you, and I got this tap, I didn't like it, not sure if it was who it was. We did it again, I didn't lunge and bark, no tap happened. You still pet me, no tap happened.
Got it.
Okay, it was the fact that I lunge and bark, not because you were coming into my space. Okay, that's why repetition is so important.
Okay.
Does it make sense? So when we do this, when it comes to the food thing, typically we do all the work first. I do the touch and all that stuff, and then the food happens at the end. You can also keep feeding in the act as so there's 2 ways about this. Technically speaking, if I want to make the dog or get the dog to like me touching them, as I'm petting them, someone would be feeding and rewarding. Okay, so she's thinking, oh, when Jesse makes contact with me, I get all these treats. And the moment I pull my hand away, everything stops. And then when I bring my hand in, everything would begin again. Pull my hand away, everything stops. So now she's thinking, oh crap, every time you come to make contact, I get this like constant barrage of rewards, right? That's technically a way. My preferred way is we just correct everything, make her go through it, and then feed at the end. Okay, so it's for me, I consider it work first, then pay.
Okay.
Right? Same thing for us. Work first, then pay.
Okay.
Unless you're in a different kind of field where they pay you up front, but.
Must be nice.
But here, does that make sense? Work
Yeah.
first, then pay. Right? Otherwise, what will happen is the dog will start to like see it kind of like a bribe, so to speak.
Okay.
Right? As opposed to like, okay, I'm gonna tolerate this, I know I'll be corrected. Oh, hey, but I get something out of it at the end, right? I like to use very high value stuff. If she's gonna be socialized with kids, typically what I'll do is give the adults a tier lower, and then kids always the highest tier
Okay.
in terms of rewards.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so like steak.
Yeah. Whatever
Okay.
the favorite thing is, you're like, okay,
Okay.
cool. So she's like, oh man, whenever I see kids, like that's the only time I get this.
Okay.
When I see adults, I get high value treats, but not the same as kids,
Okay.
right? And what we should start to see is when she's beginning to open up, you're gonna see her start to behave as if it was you. That's how you can start to tell she's opening up.
Cool. Okay.
Okay, that's the difference. So like, let's say I came over several times, we're repeating this exercise, right? And on the 20th time, I walk in and she's just like doing this, right? Next walk in, she's just doing this. And you're like, oh wow. Instead of like being like this or tense or kind of indifferent, she's like, hey,
Yeah.
right? Now we're getting somewhere.
Okay.
Okay, and you'll start to see her behavior be much more relaxed, much more as if it was with you.
Okay.
What we'd like to start seeing is her. So if I crouch down here, right? If she was really comfortable with me and wanted to say hi, what would she do?
She'd hop right up and walk over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? I crouch down, she wants nothing to do with me. She's indifferent. So she's like coexistence mode, right? So that's a great way to kind of tell where she's at.
Yeah.
Is if somebody came and you saw her kind of wiggling her butt, and you're like, hey, you know, like you would stay there, I'd be about here. They crouch down, and you see her kind of like,
Yeah, she wants to be
she
close
wants to go
you.
say hi,
Yeah.
but she probably wouldn't because she's under control. And you say, okay, break, and she gets up and walks over, and she puts herself in their space, right? Because there's two approaches here. There's me entering Leon's space, and then there's Leon entering my space. Those are two different things, okay? The reason why we do this one is this is the hardest for the dog.
Okay.
Because I'm entering into her personal space on our terms, not her terms. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I just came in, I'm gonna touch you, boom. Okay, that's why earlier we saw this, because it was on my terms. Okay, when it's on her terms, it still empowers the dog a bit. So she might be great with like walking up to people and saying hi, but the moment they're like, hey Leon, and they do it on their terms, she might have a problem. That's why we have to do both.
Okay.
Okay, but I always do this one because this one's the hardest.
Yeah.
And if the dog can handle this and start to skid over this and open up, then them coming to the person is always the easiest thing.
Okay.
Okay. Questions on any of that? So let's say you have somebody come over and you think she's in a passive state and she's relaxed and she's got her equipment on and everything. And you're like, hey, will you help us socialize our dog? And say, sure. They say, sure. You have her set up, leash and everything like that. You would do what I showed you, right? Do that a bit, few reps with the food and everything, and then you can go back and like sit down on the couch and watch TV and she's just hanging out with you at your feet, right? And you just keep repeating that. The next step, depending on how she's doing with all this stuff, is her being just coexisting with the person. So like, let's say I took Leon and I just had her with me, I just hold the leash and stuff and she was at my feet. That's technically an activity to build trust. Okay, so for us, activities to like strengthen relationships and or friendships, we have a lot of activities. We can go on a walk together, we can talk to each other on the phone, go to the movies, go shopping, go jogging, right? Go to the gym. We have all these things that we as people can do with each other that kind of strengthen that relationship, right? Dogs are the same way. But dogs can only do a few things. They would hunt if they could, they rest, they play, they eat, they use the bathroom, they mate, and maybe a couple other things, right? So the three activities that help build trust or a bond are walking or traveling with the dog, playing, and resting. Okay, so if she doesn't trust me, she's probably not going to play with me. Okay, I could walk her technically, but like let's say it's your guest and they're not going to be your dog walker. Resting. Okay, so we're sitting down, we're in the living room, Leon's by my feet or your guest's feet or whatever, you're watching TV for an hour and a half. All right, guys, show's over. See you next time. They just leave. Leon just spent an hour to hour and a half in a passive state, coexisting with that person. When they leave, she's like, oh, I went to bed. They were here, got a couple of treats. No threat, right? Then she sees them again. You can do that again and again and again. That's an activity. for dogs. It's just resting and coexisting. Okay, people tend to think socialization has to be play and or touching, right? Yes, that's a part of it, but it's not the biggest part of it. You're not going to be, I don't expect your guys to sit there and pet Leon for 2 hours, right? To try to earn her trust, or feed her for 2 hours to try to earn her trust. It's not realistic. But sit there and watching a movie and her just being in the space and not being tucked away or kept away, but also being in a relaxed state with that person is coexistence and helping her learn to open up.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
But we do all these things, and they're like all pieces to the puzzle, okay? And then maybe the first couple times your guest pets her, and then the third time you're like, nah, not tonight, not today. We're just gonna hang out.
Okay.
So then she's like, oh, okay, cool. Like they came over again, and they didn't pet me, so I don't have to feel like I'm always gonna be touched, right? Because she has boundaries as well, okay? And is trying to find what that balance is over, push, but at the same time, sometimes you just go, she just needs space today. Does that make sense? Because that helps build trust.
Okay.
Just like with people, if I have a friend that always takes me to parties I don't want to go to, at some point I'm just not going to want to go out with them.
Right.
I'm like, dude, you go to like crappy parties, I'm not going to go with you, right? So I stop hanging out with that person because I don't trust them. Take them to a good party, okay? Same thing for your dog. So we're not that different. You just have to learn to see things, what applies to us. So when I tell people in our world how that looks, they go, that makes complete sense. So yes. Now apply that to your dog.
Okay.
Okay? Watching on any of that. Do you want to try the exercise?
Sure. She usually will just kind of hang with me. All right, good. Hi. How you doing, Lily? Come here. Come here. Leanne.
There you go.
Leanne, sit.
There she is. Yeah, so you just
Is it okay if I come down this way?
Yep.
No. No. Good girl. No. No. No.
That's good.
Okay.
And you have your hand and everything on the...
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So first, when I approach, we look for a shift. Nothing, right? I come to the side, still open mouth, I come down. Brief moment, but that was probably more so just to breathe, right? Then the touch. First. Yeah. There we go. Wait a second. So I always have to wait for the pink thing. There we go. And she's like completely indifferent. There we go. And then it goes to the touch. Okay. So I just made contact and I held there. And the moment I had open mouth, I go to do the rest. So as I'm petting, I'm just watching. So I go by her elbow there. See the difference? Wait a moment. Wait a moment. And then I go to touch again. Okay, we tend to be impatient. You want to just push. And those moments when I'm holding, I'm not, and you can stand up, I'm not adding more pressure.
Okay.
Okay, because she's already going, how do I feel about this? So if I keep pushing and adding more pressure, it just keeps pushing her more.
Okay.
So I pause and I let her resolve the tension. Now I go back to touch more. Okay? And everything I see right here with me coming into her space is completely indifferent. Right? She's like, okay, there's Jessie. And she's like relaxed and she's like wanting to like rub the muzzle off and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's how it should feel. Okay? It should feel pretty relaxed. Okay? If it's not relaxed, we use that e-collar to snap her out of it before we go to the next step. Okay? Let's say you're using the e-collar and you're going up and then you feel like, man, this isn't getting better. Then don't push the situation. Okay? We'll try again next time. Okay? There's going to be failures. It's part of the process. Okay? The biggest thing is, okay, there's a failure, but do we come back and we keep walking on it? Whereas people tend to be like, oh, it didn't work. Well, it didn't work the one time. You know, like when we do socialization with dog to dog, it happens a lot where the owner's just hoping by the end of the exercise, the dog will be playing and running around. And sometimes we just get to the dogs like sitting next to each other. You can remove her muzzle too, she's fine now. And I told him, like, yeah. I'm like, well, it's just the first time.
Mhm.
This is the first time your dog has ever been this close to another dog. Like, that's so much progress.
Oh my
But they're
God.
gauging their progress. Oh yeah, we have it
I
secured
forgot.
to the e-collar. Is they're determining their success by their dog playing with the other dog by the end of the class.
Mhm.
You sit.
And I go, it might be 20 times, it might be 200 times, it might be the second time, where your dog just goes, I like this dog, I'm gonna play with them.
Good
Yeah.
job.
Okay.
Will we do that class too?
Okay.
Socialized dogs?
Yeah.
Good job.
We just, so easiest way to do that would be if you have a friend who has a dog
Yeah.
that she would see again, who
Yeah.
she's not met, is the easiest. Because then you would come back and repeat just like with anything else.
Yeah.
But the exercise is simple. Like this was stupid simple, right? But it's really about putting you in a position where you feel like, I got like, yeah, if something happened, this is completely secure, right? As opposed to like just me randomly trying to just make contact with her and pet her,
Mhm.
right? Like you have a very nice and formal structured approach of how we're going to get her to socialize with a person
Mhm.
that puts you in control.
Good job.
Yes.
Okay. When we're in that state of they're going to come pet her, never allowing the lay down. Because the
Okay.
lay down, you don't have the security drawing you anymore. It has to be from that sitting position.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Questions?
Oh, makes sense to me.
Next class can either be the in-home of having people come over so we can address any territorial behavior of people entering the home.
Okay.
And that's if I have time on my calendar, because I always have to like leave from whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
So you have to schedule that with Maria.
Okay.
Otherwise, let's say there is no space, next week for that.
Mm-hmm.
You could already go into trying to socialize with another dog. We would just need another dog.
Okay.
Because if I have to leave the park, come get the dog, go back to the park, and then come back and drop off the dog, bit of a hassle there.
Yeah.
Or if you can't get a dog by next class, the next thing I would go into is recall or come and call. Okay. So we would divert from behavior for a second, do some obedience stuff, and then maybe the next class we can do the in-home. Just depends on what my calendar looks like.
I think our next class, we're in Italy, right?
Okay.
So I let Maria know that we're out of town this next coming week.
Okay.
So 1 week
One
from
week.
today, Saturday,
Yes.
we're going. 2 Saturdays from now, I was gonna email Maria and see if I could find a different date with you, because I gotta travel that day too.
Sure.
You do like Fridays?
Yeah. Just let Maria know.
Okay.
And I would
Friday morning?
email her both of those. I'm sorry?
Friday morning, might?
Probably as early as 10 o'clock, because I hope the transport's here.
Okay,
If
So-
you can't make it, I can.
okay. Well, we'll reach out to Maria and see what your calendar looks like.
Yeah, and if it's a day where it's like, oh, it's not gonna work out with having a dog or something like that, there's other stuff that I
Yeah.
can work on. Like, there's always something I can work on.
Yeah.
So we're still keeping things moving forward. But it would be any one of those 3 depending on how it pans out.
I mean, part of me is still thinking about just going back to a busy park again, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so the only reason for this is that we just don't have to worry about anything
Yeah.
else.
No, this is really helpful to learn some of these things. I know you mentioned working on like someone coming into the door.
Correct.
That'd be a good one too.
Yeah, that's the one that would be the in-home.
Okay.
Because once you have that down, now you have both pieces to socialize her when people
Yep.
come over.
Yep.
Because she has to be in a passive state before you go to this exercise.
Okay.
Everything else, her meeting another dog can be done at the park. All the obedience stuff can be done at the park. The only other thing that would need to be inside would be the in-home.
Yeah.
I do this here, inside here, because if there was a negative moment where she flipped out,
Mm-hmm.
well, now we're in public with people like, what's going on over there? Okay, so this just kind of helps
Right.
Yeah.
remove that. But everything was completely fine with what I saw. Like from last class to today, like no tension
Yeah.
coming from her.
Yeah.
Okay, but she's indifferent. Like she's just like, all right, Jesse's here, I've seen him a few times. He's pet me a couple of times. Nothing bad's happened. But she's not like, hey, it's Jesse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else?
Not today.
Good.
We're good.
For your walks, I would work on bumping that number until, again.